Christmas morning chaos. I watched my younger sister Madison unwrap a brand new white BMW with an enormous red velvet bow while I stared at a tiny plastic piggy bank containing exactly one crumpled dollar bill. My parents beamed with pride at Madison's squeals of joy. My heart shattered as 28 years of blatant favoritism crystallized into this single devastating moment. The expensive wrapping paper scattered around the luxury car cost more than my entire Christmas gift. I quietly slipped upstairs, packed my belongings, and prepared to disappear forever from this toxic family dynamic that had poisoned my entire life. Standing in my childhood bedroom, I felt the familiar sting of being the forgotten daughter. This wasn't just about a car versus a dollar. This was about a lifetime of systematic neglect, wrapped in the guise of family love. The memories flooded back like a broken dam. When Madison turned 10, she received private piano lessons with the best instructor in town. When I turned 10, my parents handed me a stack of library books and said music lessons weren't in the budget. Madison's Sweet 16 party cost $15,000 and featured a live band, professional catering, and designer decorations. For my Sweet 16, I worked double shifts at the local grocery store to save enough money for a used Honda Civic with 160,000 miles on the odometer. Throughout high school, I maintained a 4.0 grade average, earned multiple academic scholarships, and volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. Madison barely scraped by with a 2.5 average, got suspended twice for skipping classes, and spent her weekends at parties. Yet somehow, Madison received praise for bringing home a single B+, while my perfect report cards were met with casual indifference. "We expect you to do well, Tara," my mother would say dismissively. "Madison needs more encouragement." College had been the ultimate insult. My parents paid Madison's full tuition, room, and board at an expensive private university where she majored in social media influence and partying. Meanwhile, I took out crushing student loans to attend the state school, working 3 part-time jobs to cover living expenses while maintaining my grades. I delivered pizzas until midnight, tutored struggling students on weekends, and spent my summers working at a landscaping company in the scorching heat. Even now, at 28, the pattern continued. Madison lived in a trendy downtown apartment paid for by our parents while I shared a cramped studio with 2 roommates. Madison's closet overflowed with designer clothes and luxury handbags, while I shopped exclusively at thrift stores and discount outlets. My marketing coordinator's salary was decent, but every penny went towards student loan payments and basic survival. This morning's Christmas exchange had been the final straw. Madison had torn through expensive gift after expensive gift. A new iPhone, designer jewelry, premium skincare sets, and finally the car. The car that cost more than I made in an entire year. And my gift? A children's piggy bank with a single dollar bill inside. My father had actually chuckled when he handed it to me. "Time to start saving your pennies, Tara." The humiliation burned through my chest like acid. Madison didn't even have a driver's license yet. She'd failed the test 3 times and never bothered to retake it. But somehow she deserved a $50,000 luxury vehicle while I rode the bus to work every day. I needed to leave a goodbye note. My parents deserved to understand exactly why their eldest daughter was cutting them out of her life forever. I walked downstairs to my father's home office, a mahogany-paneled room where he conducted his accounting business. The house felt different now, less like a home and more like a monument to my exclusion from this family. As I reached for a pen on his desk, my elbow knocked over a stack of papers. Documents scattered across the floor, and as I bent to gather them, my blood turned to ice water. There, in black and white, was vehicle registration paperwork for the BMW. But the name on the title wasn't Madison Collins. It was Tara Collins. My name, my social security number, my signature, forged in familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked up additional documents, insurance papers, financing agreements, extended warranty contracts, all bearing my personal information, all committing me to financial responsibility for a car I'd never seen before this morning, a car my parents had presented as Madison's Christmas gift. I grabbed my phone and photographed every single document, my mind racing with implications I couldn't yet fully grasp. Why would my parents put Madison's car in my name? Why forge my signature on financing documents? The monthly payment listed was $847, nearly half my take-home pay. Outside, Madison's celebration continued. She was FaceTiming her college friends, showing off her new baby and planning road trips she couldn't legally take. My parents stood beside her, glowing with satisfaction at their generous gift. They had no idea I'd discovered their deception. Something sinister was happening here. Something that went far beyond simple favoritism. As I stared at the evidence in my hands, a terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. This wasn't just about giving Madison a car. This was about sticking me with the financial burden while she enjoyed the benefits. I carefully organized the documents and slipped them into my purse. Whatever game my parents were playing, I was about to change the rules entirely. Dinner that evening felt like performing in a twisted theater production. Madison couldn't stop gushing about her car, planning elaborate road trips to music festivals and beach resorts. My parents nodded approvingly, occasionally glancing at me with expressions that seemed to dare me to spoil the celebration. I waited until dessert was served before placing the photographed documents on the table. The cheerful chatter died instantly. "I found these in Dad's office," I said calmly. "Want to explain why my name is on Madison's car registration?" My father's face went through several color changes before settling on an unhealthy shade of red. "That's just a paperwork error, sweetheart. I'll get it fixed next week." An error. I held up the financing agreement. "You forged my signature on a loan application." "That's not an error, that's fraud." My mother jumped in with her familiar manipulation tactics. "Tara, honey, you're being dramatic. It's Christmas Day. Can't we just enjoy this special moment as a family?" "Special for who?" I asked. "Madison gets a $50,000 car, and I get stuck with the payments." Madison's eyes grew wide with manufactured innocence. "I didn't know anything about this. I thought Mom and Dad were paying for it." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly I almost admired her skill. Almost. My father's demeanor shifted from defensive to aggressive. "You're being ungrateful and selfish, Tara. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By making accusations and ruining Christmas. Everything you've done for me." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Like what? Like making me pay my own way through college while funding Madison's party lifestyle? Like ignoring every achievement I've ever accomplished while celebrating her mediocrity?" "You've always been independent," my mother said. "Madison needs more support. She's sensitive. She's 23 years old and has never held a job for more than 2 weeks." Madison's lower lip began to tremble, right on cue. "Why are you being so mean to me? I just got a wonderful gift, and you're trying to ruin it." I stood up from the table, my appetite completely gone. "I want my name off that car registration immediately. If Madison can't afford the payments, she doesn't deserve the car." "Absolutely not," my father said firmly. "The paperwork is already processed. Besides, Madison earned this gift by getting through another semester of college. She failed 2 classes and was put on academic probation." "Everyone struggles sometimes," my mother defended. "You were always the smart one, Tara. School was easy for you." The casual dismissal of my years of hard work hit like a physical blow. I'd spent countless hours studying, sacrificing social activities and sleep to maintain perfect grades. But in my parents' narrative, my success was effortless, while Madison's failures were endearing struggles that deserved rewards. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed the BMW keys from the counter where Madison had left them next to her new iPhone. "If the car is legally mine, then I'm taking it." Chaos erupted. Madison screamed like I'd physically attacked her. My parents shouted threats and accusations. My father blocked the door, demanding I return the keys immediately. "Get out of my way," I said quietly. "The registration is in my name. I'm taking what's legally mine." "You're not thinking clearly," my mother pleaded. Sleep on it, and we'll sort this out tomorrow. But I was thinking more clearly than I had in years. I pushed past my father and walked out to the driveway. The BMW sat gleaming under the porch lights, still wearing its ridiculous red bow. I removed the oversized decoration and tossed it into the bushes. As I started the engine, my family poured out of the house. Madison was sobbing dramatically while my parents shouted demands for me to stop. I backed out of the driveway slowly, deliberately, giving them plenty of time to see exactly what was happening. I drove to a nearby hotel, paying for 3 nights with money I'd been saving for graduate school applications. The room was small but clean, and for the first time in hours, I could breathe without feeling like I was suffocating. Around 2 a.m, my phone exploded with calls and text messages. I'd turned off the ringer, but the screen kept lighting up with desperate attempts at contact. Finally, I listened to the voicemails. My father's voice was cold with rage. "Tara, you return that car immediately, or we will report it stolen. This is theft, and you will face criminal charges." The irony was staggering. They'd committed actual fraud by forging my signature, but somehow I was the criminal for taking possession of a vehicle legally registered in my name. I saved the voicemail, sensing it might be important evidence later. My mother's message was pure emotional manipulation. "Sweetheart, please come home. Madison is heartbroken. You're destroying Christmas for everyone. This isn't who you are." Madison had left 17 separate voicemails, each one more hysterical than the last. The final one was barely coherent through her sobbing. "Please bring back my car. I need it for school. I'll die without it." I turned off my phone and sat in the hotel room's single chair, processing what had just happened. For 28 years, I'd accepted my role as the family scapegoat, the one who was expected to sacrifice for everyone else's comfort. But tonight, something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to apologize. And I certainly wasn't going to return a car that was legally registered in my name. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this BMW registration issue was just the tip of a much larger iceberg. Tomorrow, I would start digging deeper into my family's financial games. Something told me I wouldn't like what I found. The next morning, I drove straight to the Department of Motor Vehicles. The building was nearly empty due to the holiday season, but a skeleton crew was working to handle essential services. I waited 40 minutes to speak with a clerk about the BMW registration. "This vehicle is definitely registered in your name," the clerk confirmed, examining the documents on her computer screen. "The purchase was financed through Mountain View Credit Union 3 weeks ago. You're listed as the primary borrower with full responsibility for the $847 monthly payment." My stomach dropped. "Is there any other name on the loan?" She scrolled through the information. "No, ma'am. You're the sole responsible party. The first payment was due yesterday, December 26th. I was already behind on a loan I'd never agreed to take." This was becoming more serious by the minute. From the DMV, I drove directly to Mountain View Credit Union. The branch manager, a kind woman named Susan Martinez, pulled my account information and confirmed my worst fears. "Miss Collins, I need to inform you that your credit application for the BMW showed some concerning elements. While the loan was approved, our system flagged several inconsistencies that we normally would have investigated further." "What kind of inconsistencies?" Susan hesitated before continuing. "The signature on your application doesn't match the signature we have on file from your checking account. Also, the income verification documents showed employment at Collins Accounting Services, but our records indicate you work at Meridian Marketing Solutions." The pieces clicked into place. My father owned Collins Accounting Services. Somehow, they'd used his business to fabricate employment records and inflate my income to qualify for the car loan. "I'd like to see my complete credit report," I said. Susan's expression grew increasingly troubled as she pulled up my credit profile. "Miss Collins, I think you need to see this privately." She led me into a small conference room and closed the door. What I saw on that computer screen changed everything. My credit score was 423. Devastating. But according to my own understanding, my credit should have been excellent. I'd been religiously paying my student loans, never missed a credit card payment, and lived well within my means. The truth was staggering. Listed on my credit report were 18 credit accounts I'd never opened. Department store cards from Nordstrom, Macy's, and Saks Fifth Avenue. High-limit credit cards from Chase, American Express, and Discover. Personal loans from 3 different banks. Even a furniture financing account from a luxury retailer I'd never heard of. The total debt in my name was $87,462. I never opened any of these accounts, I whispered. Susan nodded sympathetically. I'm afraid you're looking at a classic case of identity theft. Someone has been using your social security number and personal information to open credit accounts without your knowledge. The spending patterns told a clear story. Large purchases at upscale department stores, payments to prestigious private colleges, luxury travel expenses charged to high-end travel agencies. Someone had been living an expensive lifestyle using my creditworthiness as their funding source, Madison's lifestyle. I requested printed copies of every fraudulent account and began piecing together a timeline. The oldest account had been opened 6 years ago, right around the time Madison started college. The most recent was opened 2 months ago for a designer handbag boutique in Beverly Hills, coincidentally during Madison's fall semester shopping trip. What do I do now? I asked Susan. First, we file identity theft reports with all 3 credit bureaus. Then you'll need to dispute each fraudulent account individually. I also recommend filing a police report and consulting with an identity theft attorney. Susan handed me a stack of paperwork that felt like it weighed 50 pounds. My head was spinning with the implications. Not only had my family destroyed my credit, but they'd also saddled me with nearly $90,000 in debt that wasn't mine. I spent the afternoon at the police station filing an identity theft report. The investigating officer, Detective Rachel Kim, was thorough and professional. She explained that financial crimes within families were surprisingly common, but often went unreported due to emotional complications. The good news is that you have clear documentation, Detective Kim said. Identity theft is a serious federal crime. If we can prove someone in your family has been using your personal information fraudulently, they'll face significant criminal charges, even if it's my parents, especially if it's your parents. Elder abuse and identity theft carry enhanced penalties when committed by family members. That evening, I sat in my hotel room with a legal pad, mapping out 6 years of financial fraud. The pattern was unmistakable. Every major expense in Madison's life corresponded to a new credit account opened in my name. Her sorority fees, spring break trips, designer clothing hauls, expensive dinners at trendy restaurants, even her rent for her luxury apartment. My parents had systematically destroyed my financial future to fund their favorite daughter's extravagant lifestyle. The most sickening realization was that they'd been planning this for years, opening credit accounts gradually, spacing out the applications to avoid detection, carefully managing the payments to keep the accounts in good standing until recently. They'd been counting on my responsible nature to eventually take over the payments without question. The BMW was meant to be the final piece of their scheme. Put the car in my name, let Madison enjoy it, and manipulate me into accepting responsibility for the payments by framing it as a family obligation. But their plan had one fatal flaw. They'd never expected me to fight back. I called the attorney Susan had recommended, explaining my situation to her after hours answering service. Lydia Chen specialized in identity theft cases and agreed to meet with me first thing the next morning. As I prepared for bed in the hotel room that had become my temporary sanctuary, I realized that my family's betrayal went deeper than favoritism or neglect. This was criminal behavior that had been carefully orchestrated over years. They hadn't just failed to love me equally. They'd actively sabotaged my financial future for Madison's benefit. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of taking my life back. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what my parents had done to me. The daughter they claimed to love had been nothing more than a financial resource to exploit. The war was just beginning. Attorney Lydia Chen's office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown building. Her credentials lined the walls. Harvard Law School, Federal Prosecutor's Office, specialist in white-collar crime and identity theft cases. As I spread my evidence across her polished conference table, her expression grew increasingly serious. "This is one of the most systematic cases of family identity theft I've encountered," she said after reviewing the documents. "But I suspect we're only seeing part of the picture. Has anyone in your family ever mentioned inheritances, trust funds, or other financial assets that should belong to you?" The question hit like lightning. "My grandmother," I said slowly. "She died 3 years ago. She always told me she was leaving me something special, but my parents said she didn't have any money left." Lydia leaned forward intently. "What was your grandmother's full name?" "Eleanor May Collins. She lived in the family house until she passed. I'm going to make some calls. When someone dies with assets, there are always public records. If your grandmother left you anything, well, find it." 2 hours later, Lydia called me back with news that shattered what remained of my faith in my family. "Tara, you need to sit down for this. Your grandmother's will left you $50,000 in cash, plus all of her jewelry, including some extremely valuable antique pieces. The total value of your inheritance was approximately $75,000. My hands went numb. "What happened to it?" "Your parents were named as trustees of the inheritance until you turned 25. According to the court records, they liquidated everything exactly 3 years ago and filed a report claiming the funds were distributed to you as specified in the will. I never received anything. I didn't even know about the inheritance. I have the bank records right here. The money was deposited into an account with your name on it, but look at the signature cards and withdrawal patterns." Lydia showed me the devastating evidence. My parents had opened a bank account in my name when I turned 25, deposited the $50,000 inheritance, then systematically drained the account over the following 18 months. The withdrawal amounts corresponded exactly with Madison's college expenses during her junior and senior years. "They stole my inheritance to pay for Madison's education," I whispered. "It gets worse." "I also found records of Social Security survivor benefits that should have gone to you when your grandfather passed away. Your parents were receiving those payments on your behalf since you were 16, but there's no evidence you ever saw a penny. The survivor benefits totaled another $47,000 over the years. Combined with my grandmother's inheritance, my parents had stolen over $120,000 that legally belonged to me. Can we prove this?" "Absolutely. We have bank records, forged signatures, and a clear paper trail. Your parents violated their fiduciary duty as trustees and committed federal mail fraud by falsifying distribution reports to the probate court." That evening, I confronted this new evidence in the quiet of my hotel room. My grandmother had tried to secure my future, knowing somehow that I would need financial independence. Shed carefully saved money and preserved valuable jewelry specifically for me. My grandfather's survivor benefits were meant to help with college expenses and launching my adult life. Instead, my parents had stolen everything and used it to fund Madison's privileged lifestyle, while I struggled with student loans and financial stress. I started researching Madison's college years more carefully, cross-referencing her social media posts with the dates of withdrawals from my inheritance account. The correlation was perfect. Every time Madison posted photos of expensive dinners, designer shopping trips, or luxury vacations, there was a corresponding withdrawal from my stolen inheritance funds. She knew. Madison absolutely knew where the money was coming from. In one particularly damning Instagram post from 18 months ago, Madison had written, "So grateful for family money paying for my amazing life. Some people are just born lucky." The post was dated the same day as a $15,000 withdrawal from my inheritance account to pay for her semester abroad in France. My phone buzzed with a call from my cousin Ashley, who lived across the country and only visited during major holidays. "Tara, what the hell is going on? Your mom called me crying, saying you stole Madison's car and ran away like some kind of criminal." I decided to trust Ashley with the truth. She'd always been the black sheep of our extended family, the one who asked uncomfortable questions and refused to play along with family myths. Ashley, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to keep an open mind. I explained everything. The financial identity theft, the stolen inheritance, the years of systematic fraud. Ashley listened in stunned silence. Jesus Christ, Tara. I always wondered how Madison afforded her lifestyle. Your Aunt Jenny and I used to joke that your parents must have won the lottery or something, because Madison was living like a trust fund kid while you were eating ramen noodles. You noticed the disparity. Are you kidding? It was obvious to everyone except the adults who didn't want to see it. Madison's designer clothes cost more than I make in 6 months, and your parents always acted like her spending was normal while treating you like you should be grateful for hand-me-downs. Ashley paused, and I could hear her thinking. There's something else, Tara. Last Christmas, when Madison was showing off her new jewelry, she told me it used to belong to your grandmother. She said your parents gave it to her because she appreciated fine things more than you did. My grandmother's jewelry. The antique pieces that were supposed to be mine according to the will. Madison was wearing my inheritance while I grieved for my grandmother without even a keepsake to remember her by. I'm going to help you, Ashley said firmly. This family has been gaslighting you for years, and it stops now. I'll testify about anything I've witnessed if it comes to that. That night, I compiled a comprehensive timeline of my parents' financial crimes. The evidence was overwhelming and painted a picture of calculated, long-term theft that had robbed me of my inheritance, destroyed my credit, and funded Madison's entire adult lifestyle. But the most heartbreaking realization was that my beloved grandmother had tried to protect me from exactly this scenario. She'd left me money and precious items because she understood something about my family dynamics that had been too naive to see. My parents hadn't just failed to love me equally. They'd viewed me as a financial resource to be exploited for Madison's benefit. Every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement, I'd celebrated while my inheritance was being stolen to pay for Madison's luxuries. The next morning, I would take this evidence to Detective Kim and begin the process of filing federal charges against my parents. The little girl who'd spent years trying to earn her family's love was gone forever. In her place was a woman who understood that sometimes justice requires destroying the very people who were supposed to protect you. 3 days after meeting with Detective Kim, I received an unexpected call that changed everything. My parents had filed their own police report, claiming I had stolen the BMW and was financially abusing them by demanding access to their accounts. The investigating officer, Sergeant Michael Torres, requested that I come to the station immediately for questioning. My attorney Lydia accompanied me, armed with our growing file of evidence. Miss Collins, Sergeant Torres began. Your parents have made some serious allegations. They claim you've been forging documents and demanding money that doesn't belong to you. Lydia placed our meticulously organized evidence on the table. Sergeant, my client is the victim of systematic identity theft and inheritance fraud. We have bank records, forged signatures, and documentation of over $120,000 in stolen assets. For the next 2 hours, we presented our case. Sergeant Torres examined each document carefully, his expression growing increasingly troubled as the scope of my parents' crimes became clear. This is substantial evidence of financial fraud, he said finally. But I need to tell you something, Miss Collins. Your parents aren't just claiming you're harassing them financially. They've also alleged that you've been threatening them physically and stalking their residence. My blood ran cold. That's completely false. I believe you. But they've hired a private investigator who's been following you since you left their house. They're trying to build a case that you're mentally unstable and dangerous. Lydia's jaw tightened. They're trying to discredit her before she can expose their crimes. This is witness intimidation and harassment. The situation escalated rapidly. Within hours of our police station meeting, I received a call from my employer's human resources director. Someone had contacted Meridian Marketing Solutions, claiming I was under investigation for financial crimes and suggesting the company should terminate my employment immediately. "We're not firing you," assured HR Director Patricia Walsh, "but we need to understand what's happening. These are serious allegations." I explained the situation to Patricia, showing her the evidence of identity theft and my parents' retaliatory tactics. She was supportive, but concerned about the potential impact on the company's reputation. Meanwhile, my extended family was being systematically contacted with a carefully crafted narrative. According to my parents' version, I had suffered some kind of mental breakdown, stolen Madison's car, and was now making wild accusations to cover up my own criminal behavior. Some relatives believed them. Uncle Robert called to lecture me about family loyalty and suggested I seek psychiatric help. Aunt Jennifer sent a long email about how disappointed she was in my jealous behavior toward Madison. But others were beginning to ask questions. Cousin Ashley started her own investigation, reaching out to family members who'd witnessed years of unequal treatment. She discovered that multiple relatives had privately wondered about Madison's funding sources, but had been afraid to voice their concerns. The breaking point came when my parents made a critical error. In their desperation to control the narrative, they contacted the IRS to report that I had been hiding income and evading taxes on my inheritance. The IRS investigation that followed exposed the truth about my grandmother's estate and the fraudulent distribution reports my parents had filed. Federal investigators don't appreciate being lied to, and my parents' attempt to frame me for tax evasion backfired spectacularly. Agent Maria Santos from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division contacted Lydia directly. "We've discovered significant irregularities in the Collins family tax filings. Your client appears to be the victim of tax fraud, not the perpetrator." The IRS audit revealed that my parents had claimed my stolen inheritance as their own income without proper documentation. They'd also failed to report the survivor benefits they'd collected on my behalf, constituting additional tax fraud. "How serious is this?" I asked Lydia after the IRS meeting. "Federal tax fraud carries a maximum sentence of 3 years in prison per count. Combined with the identity theft, mail fraud, and inheritance violations, your parents are looking at potential federal prison time." That evening, my parents attempted their most desperate move yet. They hired attorney Ronald Blackwood, a lawyer known for representing white-collar criminals, and filed for a restraining order against me. Their petition claimed I was stalking them, making threats, and attempting to extort money from their family. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Lydia prepared a counter-petition requesting protection for me against my parents' harassment campaign. "They're trying to silence you before the federal investigation gains momentum," she explained. "But their tactics are actually helping our case. Every false allegation they make creates more evidence of their consciousness of guilt." The weekend before the hearing brought an unexpected development. Madison's boyfriend Trevor called me directly, something that had never happened in the 3 years they'd been dating. "Tara, I need to tell you something. Madison's been acting really strange since Christmas. She's been crying constantly and saying things about how she didn't know the money was stolen." "What exactly did she say?" Trevor hesitated. "She admitted that she knew about your grandmother's inheritance. She said your parents told her the money was basically hers anyway because you were too responsible to need help and she was more deserving." "Did she know about the credit cards in my name?" "She said she thought your parents were helping you build credit by putting her purchases on your accounts. She claims she didn't understand it was identity theft." Trevor's call was followed by an even more shocking development. Madison herself showed up at my hotel at 11 p.m., sobbing and clutching a box of tissues. "I can't do this anymore," she cried. "I can't let them ruin your life for me." "What are you talking about, Madison? The private investigator, the lawyer, the lies they're telling about you? I know you're not crazy. I know you're not a criminal. And I know they stole your money to pay for my life." Madison confessed that our parents had been planning this identity theft scheme since she started college. They'd explained it to her as a temporary arrangement where they'd use my credit to help her through school, then pay everything off before I found out. They said you'd never know because they were making all the payments. They said it was like borrowing from a family member, except you wouldn't have to worry about the responsibility. When did you realize it wasn't temporary? When the payments started getting behind last year. Dad kept saying they were having cash flow problems and needed more time. Then Mom started talking about how you should contribute to family expenses since you had such a good job. Madison revealed that our parents had been planning to gradually transfer all the debt responsibility to me over the next few years, manipulating me into taking over payments by framing it as family obligations. The BMW was supposed to be the test case. If they could get you to accept responsibility for one car payment, they were going to reveal all the other debts gradually and make you feel guilty for not helping family. Why are you telling me this now? Because they're going too far. Trying to get you fired? Hiring investigators? Calling you crazy? That's not protecting me anymore. That's destroying you. Madison agreed to provide a sworn statement detailing everything she knew about our parents' financial crimes. Her testimony would be crucial evidence for the federal investigation and would demolish our parents' claims that I was mentally unstable or making false accusations. As Madison left the hotel that night, she turned back with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Tara. I'm sorry I let them do this to you. I'm sorry I took money that should have been yours. I'm sorry I never stood up for you. For the first time in 28 years, my sister had chosen truth over comfort. The family conspiracy was finally cracking, and justice was within reach. The restraining order hearing never happened. 3 days before we were scheduled to appear in court, federal agents arrived at my parents' house with arrest warrants. I wasn't there to see it, but Ashley called me immediately with a breathless account. Tara, you need to know what just happened. I was driving by your parents' house when I saw police cars and federal agents. They arrested your mom and dad right in front of the neighbors. The timing couldn't have been more humiliating for my parents. Madison was hosting her 24th birthday celebration at an expensive restaurant downtown, surrounded by college friends and extended family. My parents had spared no expense for the party, hiring a private dining room and ordering premium champagne for 30 guests. According to Ashley's account, federal agents had waited until my parents were making their grand entrance to the restaurant before serving the arrest warrants. FBI agent Rebecca Martinez and IRS criminal investigator Maria Santos approached my parents' table just as they were toasting Madison's future. Richard Collins and Susan Collins, you're under arrest for federal mail fraud, tax evasion, and identity theft. Agent Martinez announced clearly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. The handcuffs were applied in front of Madison's college friends, extended family members, and curious diners from other tables. My parents' humiliation was complete and public. Ashley filmed the aftermath on her phone. Madison sobbing in her designer birthday dress, relatives frantically making phone calls, and the restaurant staff dealing with a birthday party that had suddenly become a crime scene. Your mom kept shouting that this was all a misunderstanding, Ashley told me. But your dad just looked defeated, like he knew this day was coming. The federal charges were comprehensive and devastating. Mail fraud for using the postal service to facilitate identity theft schemes. Tax evasion for claiming my inheritance as their income. Wire fraud for electronic transfers from my stolen accounts. Aggravated identity theft for using my personal information to open credit accounts. Violation of fiduciary duty for stealing my inheritance while serving as trustees. Each charge carried significant prison time. Federal prosecutors don't bring cases they can't win, and my parents were facing a potential sentence of 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts. The court immediately froze all family assets pending resolution of the criminal case. The house I'd grown up in, the luxury cars my parents drove, Madison's BMW, even their bank accounts were seized by federal marshals. I was appointed as temporary administrator of the frozen assets, a delicious irony that wasn't lost on anyone involved. The daughter they'd tried to financially destroy now controlled their entire estate. Madison was forced to move out of her expensive apartment and return to the college dormitory system. Without my parents' financial support, she couldn't afford her luxury lifestyle. Her designer clothes and expensive handbags became painful reminders of the stolen money that had funded her privileged existence. The plea bargain negotiations began immediately. Attorney Ronald Blackwood advised my parents that fighting the charges would likely result in decades in federal prison. The evidence was overwhelming, and Madison's testimony had eliminated their defense strategy. Federal prosecutor David Kim offered a plea agreement that would spare my parents' prison time in exchange for full restitution and cooperation. They would plead guilty to all charges, pay back every stolen dollar plus interest and penalties, forfeit their house and luxury assets, and serve 2 years of supervised probation with community service. The restitution calculation is significant. Lydia explained to me during a meeting at the federal courthouse. They owe you the original $120,000 in stolen inheritance and survivor benefits, plus $87,000 in fraudulent credit card debt, plus interest and legal fees. The total comes to $243,000. The plea agreement required my parents to liquidate everything they owned to pay restitution. Their house sold for $180,000 after paying off the mortgage. Their cars, jewelry, and other assets added another $40,000. The remaining balance would be paid through monthly payments deducted from their future income. But the financial punishment was only part of their consequences. My father lost his professional accounting license due to the fraud conviction. His business collapsed when clients learned about his criminal behavior. My mother's real estate career ended when her license was revoked for financial crimes. Their social standing in the community evaporated overnight. Former friends stopped returning phone calls. Country club memberships were revoked. Church committees quietly asked them to step down from leadership positions. The local newspaper covered the federal fraud case extensively, publishing details about the inheritance theft and identity fraud scheme. My parents became cautionary tales about family financial abuse. During the formal sentencing hearing, Federal Judge Patricia Williams delivered a scathing assessment of my parents' behavior. This case represents a profound betrayal of parental responsibility, Judge Williams stated. The defendants systematically stole from their eldest daughter while lavishing stolen funds on their youngest daughter. They violated their duty as inheritance trustees, committed federal crimes, and attempted to destroy their victim's credibility when she discovered their scheme. My parents were required to make formal public apologies as part of their plea agreement. Standing before the judge, family members, and court reporters, they acknowledged their crimes and asked for my forgiveness. We are deeply sorry for the pain we caused our daughter Tara. My mother read from a prepared statement. We violated her trust, stole her inheritance, and damaged her financial future. We accept full responsibility for our criminal behavior and will spend the rest of our lives trying to make amends. My father's apology was equally formal. I abused my position as Tara's parent and trustee to steal money that belonged to her. I forged her signature, opened fraudulent accounts, and attempted to saddle her with debt to fund Madison's lifestyle. I am ashamed of my actions and grateful that Tara had the courage to seek justice. Madison also provided a victim impact statement on my behalf, detailing how our parents had manipulated her into participating in the fraud scheme. I was wrong to accept money that I knew belonged to my sister, she said through tears. I was selfish and entitled, and I let my parents convince me that Tara owed me financial support. I'm grateful she exposed the truth, even though it meant losing everything I thought was mine. The sentencing concluded with Judge Williams ordering my parents to complete 200 hours of community service, specifically focused on financial literacy education for low-income families. Perhaps by teaching others about responsible money management, you'll develop the ethical standards you failed to apply in your own family, the judge said. As I walked out of the federal courthouse that day, I felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and sadness. Justice had been served, but at the cost of destroying my family relationships forever. The little girl who had spent decades trying to earn her parents' love was finally free from their manipulation. The woman Id become understood that sometimes the people who claim to love you are actually your greatest enemies. 2 years have passed since that Christmas morning when my world changed forever. As I sit in my own home office, reviewing the final restitution payment from my parents, I can hardly recognize the person I used to be. The financial recovery exceeded every expectation. The federal victim restitution program restored my credit completely, removing all fraudulent accounts and associated negative marks. My credit score rebounded to 762, higher than it had ever been in my adult life. The inheritance funds my parents stole, now returned with interest and penalties, allowed me to purchase a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood 30 minutes from downtown. Nothing extravagant or showy, but completely mine. The mortgage payment is less than I used to spend on rent, and I've already built substantial equity. My career flourished once the legal stress ended, and I could focus properly on work. Meridian Marketing Solutions promoted me to Senior Marketing Manager with a $22,000 salary increase. Patricia Walsh later confided that watching me handle the family crisis with such professionalism and integrity had convinced upper management of my leadership potential. I also started a consulting practice helping identity theft victims navigate the recovery process. My experience with family financial fraud gave me unique insights into the emotional and practical challenges victims face. The consulting income adds another $15,000 annually to my financial security. But the most meaningful changes weren't financial. They were personal and emotional. Madison and I rebuilt our relationship slowly and carefully. She transferred to a state school where she could afford tuition without family assistance, took a part-time job at a campus bookstore, and learned to budget her money responsibly for the first time in her life. I had no idea how much everything cost, she told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings. I was living in a fantasy where money just appeared whenever I wanted something. I never appreciated how hard you worked or how much you sacrificed. Madison's transformation was remarkable. Without our parents' enabling, she discovered her own capabilities and developed genuine self-esteem based on personal achievements rather than material possessions. She changed her major to social work, inspired by her experience with family dysfunction and financial abuse. I want to help other families avoid what we went through, she explained. I want to recognize the warning signs of financial manipulation before it destroys relationships. Our parents served their community service sentences teaching financial literacy classes at local homeless shelters and community centers. According to Madison, who maintained limited contact with them, the experience was humbling and educational. They actually learned something about money management and family dynamics, she reported. Mom told me they never understood how their favoritism affected you until they started counseling other dysfunctional families. After 18 months of supervised probation and court-mandated family therapy, my parents requested a meeting with me. I agreed to see them in a neutral setting with my attorney present, mainly because I was curious about whether they had genuinely changed. The people who sat across from me in that conference room were dramatically different from the parents I remembered. My father had aged visibly, his hair completely gray, and his face marked by stress and remorse. My mother looked smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of her choices. "We don't expect forgiveness," my mother said quietly. "We know we destroyed your trust and damaged your life in ways that can't be undone. But we needed you to know that losing you was the worst consequence of our actions." My father's apology was more specific and detailed. "I convinced myself that using your credit was a temporary solution that would help the whole family. I told myself you were strong enough to handle anything, while Madison needed extra support. But the truth is, I was weak and took the easy path instead of teaching Madison responsibility. We stole your inheritance from someone who loved you deeply," my mother continued. "Your grandmother specifically wanted to secure your future, and we perverted her gift into funding Madison's irresponsible spending. We robbed you of her love and generosity." They had brought a box containing my grandmother's remaining possessions: photo albums, letters Shed written to me over the years, and a handwritten journal where Shed documented her hopes for my future. "She wrote about you constantly," my father said. She was so proud of your independence and work ethic. She knew you'd need financial help to achieve your dreams, and she saved every penny to give you that chance. Reading my grandmother's journal that night was both heartbreaking and healing. Page after page revealed her deep love for me and her concerns about my parents' treatment of me versus Madison. Tara has such a generous heart, but I worry her parents take advantage of her goodness. One entry read, "She works so hard while Madison expects everything to be handed to her. I hope this inheritance will give Tara the security she deserves and the freedom to pursue her own happiness." My grandmother had understood the family dynamics better than anyone. Her inheritance wasn't just money. It was her way of protecting me from exactly what ended up happening. The relationship with my parents remains limited and carefully structured. We exchange holiday cards and occasionally attend Madison's important events together, but the deep trust that should exist between parents and children will never be restored. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or returning to previous relationship patterns. I can forgive them for my own peace of mind while maintaining boundaries that protect my well-being. The most important lesson from this experience is recognizing that family love shouldn't require self-sacrifice or financial exploitation. Healthy families support each member's success rather than using some members to fund others' lifestyles. I've also learned the value of documentation and standing up for yourself even when it means challenging family narratives. If I hadn't photographed those BMW registration documents and pursued legal action, it'd still be trapped in a cycle of financial abuse and manipulation. Madison recently graduated from her social work program with honors and landed a position with a nonprofit organization helping families navigate financial crises. She lives in a studio apartment she can afford on her own salary and takes pride in her financial independence. "I finally understand why you always seemed stressed about money," she told me. "It wasn't because you were cheap or selfish. It was because you were the only one in the family who understood that money has to be earned and managed responsibly." Last month, Madison called to tell me she was dating someone new, a fellow social worker who shares her values about financial responsibility and family dynamics. "I told him everything about our family situation," she said. "About the identity theft, the inheritance fraud, everything. He said it shows I've learned from my mistakes and grown as a person. As I finish writing this story, I want to leave you with the most important question I learned to ask myself. Are the people in your life supporting your growth and success, or are they using you as a resource for their own benefit? Family relationships should be built on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care for each member's well-being. If your family expects you to sacrifice your financial security, career goals, or personal happiness for their comfort, those aren't healthy relationships worth preserving. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are actually the ones holding you back from becoming the person you're meant to be. It takes courage to recognize toxic patterns, and even more courage to break free from them, but your future self will thank you for having that bravery. If this story resonated with your own family experiences, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt like the responsible one in a family where others took advantage of your reliability? How did you handle situations where family members expected you to sacrifice for their benefit? Please like this video if it helped you recognize important patterns in your own relationships. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and financial abuse, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who claim to love them. Thank you for listening to my story and joining me on this journey from family victim to empowered survivor. Remember that your worth isn't determined by how much you're willing to sacrifice for others, but by how well you protect and nurture your own growth and happiness. Until next time, choose relationships that celebrate your success rather than exploit your generosity.